Chapter 12, The Sea Cirque, GTA 107-12-32-7455-9398-0.8-1.3. About a year later, Eldon took on another assignment, a long-term one. This one, coming from the Sing Sword Lords, involved traveling to 7 star systems in a circuit and would take at least 12 quadrims or quadims. A quadrim is a period of 15.5 solar days. There are 24 quadims in a year. The period of 12 quadims would apply only if web tunnels were used for the entire circuit. It was known as a Personal Seeker Network Monitoring Circuit, or C-Circ for short. The SS domes were increasing, but were still a drop in the bucket, so to speak, of what was needed. They had a limited number of agents available and were for real cases of need in the galaxy. The C-Circ was organized to help those seekers who were isolated or on their own in some way. Those seekers were visited outside the power of the domes to give aid, encouragement, and give them an opportunity to input comments, suggestions, or questions to the Sing Sword visitor. This also enabled the S-Lords to monitor the growing number of seekers. Occasionally, announcements were made via the interstellar beacons, but still the best and most effective way to reach seekers, and ones that were just curious, was by personal visits. The general way the C-Circ was done was by the Intreb system or by other space tunnel webs similar to it. A localized web system existed between the 7 star systems on this circuit that was near Earth's star Sola. It was the nearest C-Circ to Earth, so Eldon considered himself exceptionally privileged to have it. Using the established web system was more practical and safer than hyperspeed travel. Hyperspeed was used only as a last resort now by most advanced civilizations. The web tunnels allowed the travelers to circumvent time, whereas hyperspeed did not. So only seconds or minutes will have passed in normal space-time with the use of webs instead of years with hyperspeed. This feature of the C-Circ work made it far easier for Eldon to maintain his partnership with Selena. Selena understood Eldon's desire to continue to do work in helping Ivies to seek the source, and she supported him. Eldon understood Selena's desire to stay on Earth. He supported her in her work with children and animals. They could not communicate when Eldon was doing the C-Circ, except by Kishina. This was a means of tuning in to each other's thoughts across time and space. It was developed by Ivies with extra sensibilities like Selena. She learned it and taught it to Eldon. Eldon was able to use this by means of source speak while looking at the light from Earth's star. This was similar to remote viewing, but being focused on an individual's thoughts. Eldon realized more all the time that space and distance were relative. There were amazing ways to connect 2 points in space if you can learn how. For this assignment, Eldon was given an AS-210 shuttle. It came with an android assistant and was made for just 2 occupants. Most of the web tunnels opened in close enough orbits of the planets. Some had web stations on the planet with a pad large enough for a small craft. Eldon would need to use his shuttle to travel short distances. He could have signed on to a science or survey mission for a government or federation, but he passed them up. He could have been a trader or a collector of galactic artifacts and treasures. Perhaps it would have been an interesting occupation for a while, but what Eldon really wanted to do, what his calling was in connection with and pursuit of the source. It was not a popular occupation, but the most satisfying for him. This current assignment would allow him to find the greatest treasures, intelligent beings seeking the singular source of all life. This was what he was waiting for while living a simple life on Earth. I will be thinking of you, Selena, and wishing you were with me with every pulse of starlight. I will think of you every day and night, Eldon. Wishing is an old Hearthite way that I am beginning to understand. Kishina is one of my ways which I will use. I, too, may the Creator keep you safe. May the Source be with you on your journey, my dear one. The first two star systems, Proxima and Alpha, Eldon had visited before, but not as a Sing Sword on the Seeker circuit. The Seekers on most of the 19 planets on Eldon's list knew that an SS visit was coming within a certain time period. When Eldon came into their space or within range, he could set up exact times by radio. The majority were willing to set aside time as soon as possible, since these visits were no more often than once a year. Eldon's android assistant, Lynn 1050, would help make contacts and set appointments, as well as many other duties. Alpha and Proxima are really a binary system. The two stars actually revolve around each other, albeit extremely slowly. Each has its own planets, gravitational plane of influence, and everything that stars have around them. The first planet of Proxima, Dinawa, is culturally and technologically advanced enough to have the Webb station on the surface. It rates as an 8 on the tech scale, with Earth being a 10. All the planets on this circuit rate 10 or below, but in other parts of the galaxy, some are much more advanced, even rating 100. Two Dinawan Seekers were there to meet Eldon. They took him and his assistant, who had their shuttle reduced and stored inside him, to a secure location for a private meeting. Eldon informed them of the latest news of the SS, that is, of the Sing Swords, and their work galaxy-wide. The two gave Eldon a list of all the Seekers there, which included 258 names and some general information. "We would caution you that there may be an enemy to the cause among us. We received word that enemies have arrived and may be posing as SS Seekers. A few suspect names are highlighted." Eldon was a little disappointed that this matter would come up at the start of his first visit, but he did not seem fazed and stated confidently, "We are trained to recognize and deal with opposition and enemies. My assistant Lynn is here to scan, inform, and protect." That day, Eldon spoke with several groups and answered questions. Lynn was constantly scanning the audience and recording everything. Those were all in private dwellings and went well. The next day was a meeting in a public park. A good number of the questions were square one type, as if it was the first Seeker meeting for several of them. Eldon was getting questions like, "What do Sing Swords do? Why do you believe in a singular source? And why is he called the Creator?" The group was on the side of a small hill, some on benches, some sitting on the ground, and some standing. Lynn was at Eldon's side, ever alert. He noticed one Ivy standing who was not Dinawan. He was Herthite in form, but had spikes or antennae protruding from his head. Lynn focused on this Ivy's eyes. Lynn noticed that he kept looking to one side. Then he looked in his hand, maybe at a chronometer of some kind. Then a park worker came into view where the spike-head Ivy was looking. The worker picked up something from the ground with a rod and put it into the waste receptacle there. Then he laid the rod on top of the waste can so it was horizontal and slowly pointed it toward Eldon. Without delay, as soon as it found its target, it shot a projectile. Lynn instantly stuck his arm in front of Eldon with faster than Ivy android speed. The projectile hit Lynn's hand, not even denting it. Lynn then fired a laser beam from his eyes and fused the end of the rod. The would-be assassin ran, but was caught by park security. That's when Eldon appreciated what a lifesaver Lynn really was. Unfortunately, the spikehead Ivy had disappeared. This assignment would have more dangers than Eldon had originally thought. He considered this visit to Dinawa to be a success, so he said in his log. The Dinawans were known for their diligence and would apply the things they had learned. The other planet of Proxima was Nikuso. The inhabitants were descendants of a race of dwarf miners. They were honest but had no tact or diplomacy. The 35 SS Seekers there were refreshingly more civilized than most of the population. The first stop at Alpha was Giorni, a planet equal to Earth in tech progress, but the number of Seekers was only 287, even though its population was 3 times that of Dinawa. It seemed that generally the more advanced the civilizations, the fewer Seekers were found in relation to the number of inhabitants. There were exceptions to that, especially in the ones with tech rates higher than 10. The pervasive attitude found on Giorni was, "We do not just see the light, we are the light." The other 2 planets of Alpha had their own unique challenges. Wakes, as a civilization, was extremely distrusting of outsiders. One of their precautions was flocks of doelps. These creatures were quite large and looked like ships orbiting their planet. Any visitors had to ride inside the doelps to the surface. The one that came to meet Eldon in orbit was oblong with alternating light spots. It resembled a ship, but was not, of course. He was told to spacewalk out to its opening and enter it. Eldon's assistant Lynn was not allowed to come with him to the planet's surface. At first it was dark inside, then the walls began to illuminate the chamber somewhat. The doelp did not talk to him, but he could feel its probing empathically. Since the metanova, Eldon had gained some kind of extra awareness that was similar to what Selena possessed naturally. This no doubt helped him to learn Kishina, thought connection over vast distances. The probing of the doelp was not invasive or harsh at all to Eldon. He realized that this ingenious method of feeling out visitors had worked well on wakes for millennia. It was a good symbiosis between the doelps and the ibis on wakes. The ibis of the 3rd planet of Alpha had long been considered to be the inferior race by the others. Chalbala, shrouded in a clouded atmosphere, looked foreboding. The ancestors of the ibis there were servants of those on Giorni. Long ago there was a war on wakes between those servants and the masters of Giorni. After that, Chalbala was used as a dumping ground for undesirables. Only in the last 2,000 years of their time had Chalbala come into its own, independent of the others. Their appearance was repulsive to any Earthite. Their color matched the dark gray of the planet's surface. Their shape was that of a stumpy tree with short limbs that changed locations. They communicated by a combination of gestures and puffs of gas. The odor of the gas was rancid. Fortunately, Lynn was able to help with the translation. If the translation was accurate, these ibis seemed to appreciate Eldon's visit more than the other 2 planets. They kept making reference to a day in paradise, which Eldon assumed meant a future time. The visit to the next system, Gamma, went very smoothly and efficiently. It made Eldon wonder, because it was almost too easy. All of the Seekers he was to visit were gathered at one location on each planet, G2, G3, and G4. They were very punctual, being there and ready to take notes at the time they set. Even though it was in the middle of the night, they were very businesslike. That was the way Gammons were with everything. So Eldon was not quite sure how important this was to them. Was it just another business proposal to them, even though apparently done in secret? As Eldon and Lynn were walking away from the building and toward their shuttle, someone called out to them. They turned back to see a soldier talking to a hooded person. He called again, "Wait, I must talk to you." The soldier started to walk toward them. The hooded person was gone. Eldon began to wonder if they were in some kind of trouble because seeker groups had been outlawed in Gamma space. He walked hurriedly up to Eldon. He was wearing a GCC uniform. "Are you the Sing Sword named Eldon?" He answered truthfully, "Yes, I am Eldon." "Good. I have been waiting for the right time to talk to you. I believe in what you are doing. I want to seek the source also, but I have not told anyone yet, since it is forbidden." Lynn turned to Eldon and said, "I would like to ask him a question." "Go ahead, Lynn." "Who was the Ivy you were talking to a moment ago?" "Oh, that was my brother, Woodsplain. He tried to dissuade me from talking to you. He has a curiosity, but is too cowardly to act on it. Even more afraid than me." "So did you tell him about your belief?" Eldon probed. "He does not know of my belief and desire to seek the source. He thinks I am just questioning you out of simple curiosity." "How do you intend to seek the source when you are part of an organization that is working against us?" Eldon asked. "I know I will at some point have to disengage myself from this occupation, but they do not allow discharge for my reason. The only way at the moment is to flee and become a fugitive." "What does seeking the source mean to you?" Eldon asked, looking into his face. "I have seen the strength in the faces of many seekers. I have also seen how the Creator helps them. It is the most important thing. Seeking the source, I see now, is why we are here." Eldon gave him a list of the coming SS domes in that sector. "Where are you going from here?" the soldier asked. Eldon started to answer, but Lynn interrupted. "We cannot tell you." "It is all right, Lynn. It is Volaris, but I cannot give you an exact time because we will be traveling there by hyperspeed." "Thank you for this anyway. I will try to get to one of these SS domes. May the source protect you." They set course for Volaris, and Eldon prepared for hypersleep. "Why did you tell that soldier where we are going?" Lynn asked. "Because I believe in him. He had a sincerity about him. We have nothing to fear from him." "That is your decision, of course, but I do not trust in every word. I follow procedures and security codes first." "I know, and I appreciate that. But when you have dealt with as many IBs as I have, you get to know who to trust, and it varies. I think all seekers should have a trust. We have a higher power to answer to." "Why then the change to hyperspeed?" Lynn questioned. "We have the option to use hyperspeed instead of web tunnels. This seems to be a good time to use the option." "Very well, Eldon." Eldon lay down in the hypersleep bed. Before he sealed it, he said, "Wake me 12 hours before we get to Volaris." "It shall be done," Lynn affirmed as he checked the controls. Before Lynn went to his sleep mode, he made a note that the soldier in question had what looked like nodes on his head, where spikes may have been. 10 hyperspeed days later, Lynn became active and then awakened Eldon. Eldon used the hours of pre-Volaris space to review records about it. He also used a virtual program of the Sing Sword Artifact Archive. He could read, add, or modify information and view artifacts in 3 dimensions. When he completes his session, the signal will be sent. When received at the SAA, the changes will be made. Of course, after each planet visited, he makes a report by interstellar ultrabeam, similar to the galactic beacon. As they approached the outer edge of Volaris' solar system, they prepared their response to interplanetary traffic control. Due to the present High Command's position against Delcoms, delusional combatants, or anyone who attributed to a creator or God the source of life, it was necessary to conceal their true purpose for being there. Eldon responded to the ITC call for identity, purpose, and destination with the following: Aldenon 1, Betelgeuse 214, and Len 1050, Research Mission for ADN Enterprise, which was a scientific entity on Earth. He used it for situations like this one. Volaris was a sapphire solitar, a bright white flexuous or variable star in a space separated from the other stars in that arm of the galaxy. The light from it was undulating or modulating from white to blue-white at a rate that was very slow and quite mesmerizing to watch, through filters, of course. Its planets were beautiful to view from a distance. The closer examination unfailingly revealed the flaws and dark pockets of each. Tomjakus being the largest and with the oldest civilization, was their first stop. The bulk of the population took pride in their military history as conquerors and protectors of the domain. That was the face they wore outwardly. Then, after meeting a number of the Ibis of Tomjakus, Eldon could see the other inward face of kindness and friendliness. He could see they were capable of higher Herthite-type qualities. Eldon now explains in his own words what he did. On this planet, it was necessary to meet with seekers one-on-one or in very small groups. More than the usual precaution was needed due to the ban on seeker activity. Once inside the contact's dwellings, we pursued a series of questions to reveal their beliefs and intent. To any onlookers, we were just taking surveys about everyday life. But the true seekers knew why we were there, and through certain code talk, received more out of it. At some markets or places of business, we would look at food or merchandise item and call the seeker contact to come to us. Then we would talk about the item and use code talk if there were people around. For example, I would say, "Do you know where this originated?" By this the seeker knew that I was asking, "Do you know the source?" or "Are you seeking the source?" If they say, "Yes, I know the source, but I would like to know more about it," then I would give information about our work, such as, "There are other items like this in so-and-so sector," or "There are others in this system or that planet." By that I would be letting them know there are other seekers in those areas. If they say no to the first question, or they do not mention the word source, which is what those seekers were notified to say for a SS visit, then I would move on to the next contact. On leaving orbit of Tomjakus, they had to inform ITC where they were going next. All traffic between planets was closely monitored. They were taking a flyby orbit of Mictepus. However, since there was only one seeker on that planet that they were aware of, they had to have a reason for visiting him. They knew that the seeker would be sending a signal out every day, 2120 LS. This was a unique signal they would be scanning for. Lynn devised a mask for the scan that sounded like a radio problem. It gave the impression that their radio was weak and not working properly. Since the seeker, Boris, was a repairer of all types of radios and comm machines, it would make sense to stop there. What Boris told them while he was working on their radio problem was very encouraging to them. He said he had been able to communicate with other seekers on Tomjakus and Kimatis on a hidden frequency. It was coded messages hidden inside a message about his repair business. He told them, "I will do what I can to keep contact with these seekers. It gives me a joy, how you say, thrill, to deliver messages that give higher purpose for our being." Eldon had a personal log that he began to see a pattern in. In all these extremely diverse IB civilizations, tribes, and individuals, they had some things in common as seekers of the source. They all acknowledged a higher power. They all sought a higher purpose for our being, and they all were beginning to realize a unity or brotherhood of a sort. The trip to Kimatis, the third planet of Valaris, required a major deviation from their plans. They started their approach and gave the landing request in musical form, since that was the way communication was done there. The reply, with descending, lengthening tones, told them to land in between two large population areas. As they neared a large open area, their craft was suddenly hit by a very strong downdraft wind. Then lightning started flashing out of nowhere. There were no clouds in sight. Lightning, or an energy charge, hit the shuttle, rendering it powerless. It was falling fast. But before it hit the ground, a gust of wind lifted it enough to miss some rocks, and it hit, but at a reduced speed. That wind cushion had just saved their lives. That said, it was a hard enough hit that Eldon was knocked unconscious. He did not know how long he was out, but when he awoke, Lynn was gone. Eldon slowly climbed out of the still intact shuttle. He was a little shaken. He looked out over the plain and saw some bushes and the city in the distance. Then he heard voices and turned around to see a crowd of ibis suddenly coming upon him. A tall one in a black robe approached him and asked, "Are you the Sing Sword?" "What happened? That wind, the lightning?" Eldon asked. "We have many minor atmospheric disturbances. Are you hurt?" "No, I don't think so, but my partner is not here." "We have seen no other, only you." Eldon looked around in a confused gaze and asked, "How did you get here?" He saw no vehicles. "We have a system of tunnels. It is necessary for us. I am Gornamus. We are the Clarons of Kimatis." He looked back and called a name. A female Ivy came forward. She had large eyes and very long fingers. Gornamus introduced her by saying, "This is Kenyasis. She is an Impata. She will examine your physical condition to determine if you are injured." She stood in front of Eldon and looked directly into his eyes. Her piercing eye contact was totally captivating. An appendage with several feelers emerged from her chest and touched Eldon's chest. Within a few seconds, Eldon felt only a clearing of his head and a slight buffering of his energy. The Impata withdrew from him. "Amazing! I feel better," Eldon admitted. "We number 154. We are ready to hear you in this place. Will you have the Seek Source meeting with us now?" Gornamus asked. "Yes, I could, but I must find my partner Lin." Eldon explained who Lin was and tried to call him on his compod. Gornamus gestured toward the sky, saying, "Those things generally do not work out here." "If that is the case, I must try the shuttle as a relay." Eldon entered the shuttle, put in a command, came out, and up the shuttle went. It slowly rose straight up to about 500 meters. It was boosting Eldon's signal while looking for Lin's. Eldon and some of the Ivies there looked at the sky and listened in silence for a few minutes. Gornamus now approached and said, "While you listen for your friend to call, please tell us about your search for the source." Eldon felt rather dubious and unsure in this situation. It was only the second time he had been separated from Lin on this sea cirque. But this one was unplanned, and he wondered what could have happened to him. He decided to speak to the small crowd there, while keeping compod close to his ear. Eldon started with basic information about seeking for the source and why. He adapted his talk to the tech level of the planet, which was T6. Also, he had to take into consideration the local history of the Seekers. He now asked, "Are there still 2 Seeker groups here, and do they work together?" "Yes, but the situation has changed for the worse in the last 10 years. We are what is left of the true Seekers. The others, being greater in number, are seeking their own glory," Gornamus said disgustedly. "What do you mean?" with some consternation. "We are convinced of the Creator's reality and relevance in our lives. We give him what we call prime seek. The other group, known as the Joltons, are seekers in name only. They are crusaders for power and will stop at nothing to get what they want." "How do they crusade for power? What do they do?" "An example is, on a so-called crusade to the edge of our star, Valaris, they used intimidation, violence, and plunder, taking any ships in their way. Their claim to be seekers has provided a certain zeal and devotion to their cause, but they are only seeking their own glory and power." Dry and unmerciful was the sound of static in Eldon's ear, with occasional echo beeps from the shuttle. This filled one ear, while the other heard Gornamus' serious descriptions of the Joltons and other frustrations. The faces of the group there as Eldon looked at them were haggard but resolute, eager to hear any good word. Eldon now tried to draw up some meaningful words for them. "This is disturbing news. For true seekers, as you appear to be, believe and advocate order and peace. Violence is unacceptable for true IB seekers. I would advise you to continue your Prime Seek activities and avoid confrontations with the Joltons. Gornamus responded positively. We intend to do just that. We believe the Creator, Source, is concerned with our search and can give us the strength to endure, and ultimately we will gain a higher life, closer to the Source. I'm glad to hear you say that. It has been proven that seekers with that attitude do well and endure longer. When we rely on the Creator and not just ourselves, we can be empowered to endure anything. But we must help others to see the Source as the Creator and not simply as the Source. The Creator is the supreme IB and sees us as individuals, can assess each one's needs, and can provide the appropriate direction and help. Does the Creator send help to each seeker personally? Gornamus asked. I believe he does, but I'm curious, how did the others become self-serving and violent, as you said? It is my understanding that their current leader's father was killed in some kind of raid. When the son began to lead the group is when things were changed. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city near there, called Odakwis, Lin returned to an active, aware state. He was suspended above a large platform in a huge room full of smaller platforms. The bands holding him prevented him from moving at all. There were groups of IBs at the other platforms, some watching holographic displays. A large dark figure approached, and a light shone from underneath the platform, making the whole thing a spotlight on Lin. The figure was wearing shiny black armor with protruding spikes on all sides. It removed a helmet, and the black mass began to take the shape of a Hearthite head, like Lin had. The figure now spoke in a vibrating voice. I am Rigsjan. We are the Joltons of Kimatis. Can you understand and speak? Lin answered in a slow, deliberate voice. I can understand. Where am I, Rigsjan? This was the closest thing to fear that Lin had experienced. He did not know what had happened. Rigsjan motioned for him to be lowered. Lin came down and the bands disappeared. Seats came up and they both sat down. We are in our operations base outside of Odakwis on Kimatis. His voice was now calm and stable. I have memory of a storm and an emergency landing, but that is the last. We found you lying on the ground on the other side of Odakwis. We immediately brought you here. You are an android, very unusual. From where do you originate? First, I would like to know if you found my partner Eldon, or the shuttle, our craft. As we flew near the city, we came low and only saw you, no one else, and no craft. After a short exchange, Lin could see that Rigsjan was being honest with him, as far as he could tell. He recalled Eldon's words. You get to know who to trust, and it varies. I think all seekers should have a trust. We have a higher power to answer to. So when Lin learned that they were seekers of the Source, he told them he was from Earth and the purpose of their mission. After a while, their conversation reached this point. For these reasons and the examples of supernatural intervention, we know the Creator takes interest in IB affairs, Lin reasoned. Rigsjan seemed a little perturbed. Why do you insist on calling the Source a Creator? We have seen no such evidence that it is an almighty person or intelligent being. It is the source of energy and motion. Granted, it is very mysterious, but a person or great benefactor? No. So you see no benevolence in the Source? Lin asked for confirmation. No, there is no force for good, no supreme plan for peace and unity, as you say, was the cynical reply. Then what is the reason for life and all that we see in the universe? Is it just a matter of random movement? Lynn offered for the argument. We are not saying that the source is random movement. That would be nonsense. We say that the order that comes from the source is not a benevolent or beneficial thing for all. To the contrary, it works as much disorder and detriment as it does benefit. Lynn was getting more confident as he tried to understand Rixjan's points. How can there be order with no clear purpose or intelligent designer? No reply from Rixjan. Lynn tried again. Why would a designer send out order and design without any purpose or a conflicting purpose? Rixjan stood, kicked his seat, and in a raised voice came back with, "Who knows what the purpose is, or if there is one? But we know from all our experience that we must fight to survive. We only have each other to help. We must gain whatever power we can because it is strong over weak. We know the source is the ultimate power, so we seek it for future security. Do you understand, Lynn?" "Yes, I do see your point," Lynn said slowly as he heard warning sirens in his head. "No one is going to snatch us out of the fire or take our hand and lead us to the garden. We must do that. And we best do it by tapping into the source. You and your Sing Sword friends should know that." Suddenly Lynn put his hand on his forehead. His inner calm just became active again, and he heard the signal coming from the shuttle. He did not tell Rixjan about it, but continued his conversation with him while commencing a conversation on his inner calm with Eldon. "Go on, Rixjan," he said when he stopped. Lynn could carry on two conversations at once because of the way he was made. His speaking on the intercom was in a special code. "Lynn, respond. Where are you?" "I am at the Jolton base near Odakwis." "Are you all right?" "Yes, I am talking to Leader Rixjan. He has an interesting viewpoint. With your galaxy-wide influence, you could create a real power. What would you have me do, Rixjan?" "Join us. One day you will rule as a Jolton Lord in the new order we will establish." "I am talking with the Clarons. We need to meet." "Yes, Eldon, but I want to finish here." "I hear you, but a warning, beware of the Joltons." "And my purpose cannot be changed that—" Lynn paused because Eldon's message broke off. "That easily. Do you see my point?" "Certainly, Lynn. That is no problem. Your purpose can be altered." Unknown to Lynn, a mysterious blorb floated by, blocking the signal from the shuttle. Eldon tapped his comm pod. He looked up to see a white cloud blocking the view of the shuttle. He kept looking and noticed that it was changing shape. Then it moved away very fast. He tried to get Lynn again, but nothing. Eldon stayed with the Clarons a few days. They flew around the area scanning for Lynn, but never found or heard from him again. Finally, it was the day for Eldon to move on to the next star system. A group of Clarons came with him to see him off. They found his shuttle near the spot where he first landed. Eldon was quite visibly saddened and anxious about how he would continue without Lynn. Gornimus now said to him, "I have some news that may enliven you, Eldon. Just this morning we had one who has volunteered to go with you to finish your mission. It is Kenyasis." She stepped forward and said respectfully, "I have felt your life energy and know that it is focused and pure as is mine. I can learn fast, and I would like the honor to accompany you." Eldon looked into her large eyes, now appearing somewhat shy, and asked, "Are you willing to accept the dangers involved?" "I am willing," was the immediate reply. "Can you do what Lynn did?" He knew that she could not perform the same as Lynn, but he asked anyway. "Not all. But I can do some things that Lynn cannot do. Yes, I'm sure you can. All right, you may come with me, but this is going to be strictly Sea Circ business. There is no time for any distractions. I understand. Then she smiled in her empata way and said, Thank you. Eldon turned to Gornimus and asked, What will they do with Lynn? The Joltons will do whatever they have to do to get him to support their cause. Your android friend could be a powerful tool for them. Eldon looked toward the city as he lamented, I'm afraid they have done something to him, or we would have seen him by now. Looking toward the same horizon, Gornimus said, They believe there is no creator that can help us. It is all up to us to use our own devices to seek power, and the source is the ultimate power for them. Eldon now looked at Gornimus and the others. They are alone. They do not know the security and peace of being at unity with the Creator. Without the Creator, our existence is like specks of dust caught in a merciless wind, taking us nowhere. They said goodbye and felt satisfied that what they both had lost and gained was to the greater good. Eldon and the Clarons were more connected and focused on their goal. They were more sure of their place in the Creator's order up to that time. Eldon and Kenyasis arrived at the next destination in a short time, galactically speaking, because they rode the Intrib to Setstron. It was a yellow dual-shell star with 3 inhabited planets, Pomtrez, Konzir, and Sunbezen. The population of Pomtrez was 95% clone, made from the original settlers there. Some of the younger ones were 7th generation clones. They were smaller and did not live as long. They were not capable of really original thought. However, there was a growing group of seekers there who wanted to know not only where they came from, but the origin of all life. Sunbezen was a polygon world of leftover parts from Pomtrez and other places. The planet is a polygon, not a sphere. It has only straight sides and corners, no round surfaces at all. The population exists inside giant cubes and various 6-sided structures on the surface. They were arranged for life by the Grand Stack and are themselves multi-sided stacks. They know how to put together any number of parts from other worlds to make a living stack. Some can even reproduce. Eldon and Kenyasis were required to wear special stack suits when there, so they would resemble the stack Ibis there on Sunbezen. Konzir was actually an asteroid made into a prison. It was their final stop, so as not to arouse suspicion of the 2 planets before they went to them. They visited a few groups of seekers there. Kenyasis was able to use her empata ability to heal some of their physical disabilities. One of them remarked, My source speak requests have been answered. I am indebted. It is still good to be alive. Kenyasis was the perfect partner in that place. She was adapting quickly to this new occupation, as she told Eldon. She did some things just as well as Lynn. Eldon was very happy with her. From Konzir, he was able to contact Selena by means of Kishina. There was no jealousy over his new partner, only the feeling of gladness that things were going well for Eldon. The next system was problematic at best, a risk of being forever lost at worst. Armin, a blue pulsar, the farthest star on the galactic spiral arm of this sea circ, was still reachable, or was it? The neck of the web tunnel that led to it was almost never used, so Eldon did not know if it was passable. He sent a small probe through it and received its signal for what was supposed to be 80% of the tunnel. Eldon felt it was an acceptable risk and took the tunnel to Armin. When they emerged from the web tunnel, the pulsar Armin was not there. After a scan, they located it 5 light-years distant. The tunnel had apparently drifted, or a dimensional shift had taken place. In some parts of the galaxy, web tunnels become dimensionally unstable. You could end up in a place that is very far from your time zone, so to speak. You could find yourself in a far future or far past from where you were. Also, the place itself may be an alternate universe. That said, for the most part, web tunnels, especially intreb ones, were a stable and reliable means of travel. The intreb calibrates your time in the galaxy to match the time of your entry point, so when you return home, little if any time has elapsed. However, if you use hyperspeed, which is in normal space, time passes quickly on your home world. That is why Eldon does not use hyperspeed except when necessary. He knows that already the hyperspace travel he has done has elapsed possibly a number of years on Earth. But now they had to use hyperspeed to get to Armon, not knowing exactly what they would find. They came out of hyperspeed some 600,000 kilometers from the planet Franois, which Eldon felt was a safe distance. Their scans indicated that this planet was at Tech 6 level, one level below what the record said. It looked as though they had entered a dimension of its past. Eldon initially thought it would be wise to land away from a heavily populated area, but Kenyasis disagreed. She reasoned that no seekers would be expecting them, so they should announce their intentions. Eldon checked the database for information on Franoi of the past, but there was nothing on seekers. One thing he found which might affect them was the fact that there was a movement to ban all space travel, so they decided to land at what appeared to be an airport. Their shuttle came down in the center of a landing area at the far end from the buildings there. The radio was buzzing with an indecipherable babble. Eldon made no attempt at answering the radio. Soon they noticed a number of transports coming from one of the buildings. They were headed straight for the shuttle. Eldon quickly loaded the Franoi speak they had into his portable translator. This was one of the most unnerving moments of the Sea Cirque thus far. The place was really unknown, so Eldon reassured Kenyasis. The Creator sees what we do and can help us to adapt and overcome. They stepped outside the shuttle to show themselves and that they had nothing to hide. The transport stopped all around the shuttle. Two of the occupants approached the two visitors. They looked more Hearthite like Eldon, but as they got closer, the reptilian eyes and pointed ears could be discerned. At set strangers, sat slat you in violation slats you come now sas with us slas. That was how it sounded through Eldon's translator. They had no choice but to go with them to their building. In the transport, the officers kept their weapons ready and their eyes fixed on the visitors. Eldon could see it was more curiosity on their part, rather than being threatened by him and Kenyasis. The transport entered the building through a large door and stopped within a few meters of an interior door. The visitors were quickly shuffled into that door and immediately put into a room with no windows. One dim lamp overhead was the only light. Two utility benches were the only items in their warm, dark prison. After what seemed like an hour, two officers entered. They returned Eldon's translator and began to speak. To Eldon's surprise and relief, it translated clearly now. You are in violation of our law that says space travel, most certainly the warping of space to achieve faster than light speed, is banned in the space of Armon. What is your purpose, and from where do you come here? We are here as a service to all seekers of the source. We originated from Earth in the Alpha Sector, was Eldon's honest reply. The two officers looked at each other and exchanged some low hissing sounds. Explain the source. The source, the origin of all life, the Creator. Do you have any here that seek this first cause or source? One of the Franoi, as they are called, put his hand on his chin as in thought. The other finally said, The uplookers, The ones that look at sky and clouds and say, "Where is Deuce?" Yes, that sounds like they could be seekers. Where are those? Can we see them? This can be arranged, but first you must answer more certain questions. During the conversation that followed, they explained why they had to use hyperspeed to get to Frenoy. The Frenoy officers explained to them the reason for the ban on space travel. In the last millennium of their history, many travelers came to their star system. Many came by means of hyperspeed travel. Then came the reports shifts of the planet's orbit. This caused great earthquakes, floods, fires, and extremes in temperatures. The cause of the orbital shifts was unknown, and the space travel continued. Then came reports of time shifts in which individuals and even whole communities were thrown ahead in time. Finally, in the 8th century of the last millennium, when hyperspace travel in this area of Arman was at a peak, physical laws were destabilized or undermined by all the warping of space. Cracks and holes began opening to other dimensions in and around Frenoy. This situation made life very uncertain and dangerous. It was called the Zamok time. After much research, all these anomalies were linked to hyperspeed travel. It was tearing apart the fabric of space. So all space travel was banned. Frenoy and the other planet of Arman, Gragun, essentially became isolated from the rest of the galaxy. Eldon felt badly for their situation and said, "We were not aware of your dire situation here. We apologize for violating your law." The last 200 years have been relatively stable since our warnings have gone out. We have heard of the tunnel that you say you used to get here. A short 5-light-year tunnel is in development to reach it, but it has opposers. Being connected to the Intrab system could mean so much to your two worlds, Kenyasis offered. Yes, but Gragun is not ready for such a bridge. They are quite primitive. Later the visitors were taken from their holding cell and put into better quarters. The treatment of them by the Frenoy was more like guests than prisoners now. Of course, they were still closely watched. 2 days later, the visitors were taken to a spot near a lake where the uplookers gather about every 12 days. The lake was on the edge of a kind of public park. An open area next to the water is where they gather. A 2-meter-high fence separated the open area near the lake from the rest of the park. It was not long before they came. Only 10 ibis gathered on the other side of the fence near the water. They were mostly Frenoy with a few other outworlders. Their dress was simple and without much color. First they did some kind of chanting. Eldon and Kenyasis watched with keen interest. Then they all formed a semicircle and looked up to the sky over the lake. They began to say, "Oh, Deuce, where are you? Our eyes are toward you. Look down on us this day. Where are you, Deuce?" This brought memories of the Clarons on Kimatis to Kenyasis. She could not hide the sparkly tears in her eyes. Eldon noticed that their looking up was not in expectation of seeing anything, but was apparently just part of their ritual. They also spoke loudly enough that passers-by could easily hear, and some ibis would call them names and even throw scraps of food over the fence as if they were feeding animals. Then one by one each member spoke to the group. It was in the local language, so Eldon could use his translator. They were giving some personal experiences on how Deuce had affected their lives. This was just the kind of opportunity that Eldon was looking for. He and Kenyasis now found the way to the lake side of the fence. Eldon asked if he could also speak. When it was granted, he started like this. "Uplookers and seekers of Frenoy, I am Eldon from Earth. This is my friend Kenyasis from Kimatis. We visit groups of intelligent beings like yourselves who are seeking Deuce, or the Source as many call it. We have found that this Source or Creator can affect our life in a beneficial way. In fact, there is much evidence that Creator takes much interest in us and can directly influence or help us, as many of you have discovered. Eldon did not mention space travel in compliance with instructions from the officers. He went on to tell the story of how, when being chased, he found Don Viejo, who provided refuge from his enemies. Then he related how a mysterious wind saved him from certain death on Cumatis, and soon after that, in that location, he met his present partner, who proved to be just what he needed for his mission. Then Kenyasis took her turn to speak. The group was enthralled with every word of her description of how her parents expelled her from their home when she became a seeker. She spoke with a rare conviction and warmth about the seeker group that took her in as part of their family. When provisions were low, something always happened, sometimes unexpectedly, to enable the group to continue on. These testimonies were a special delight to the group there. They wanted the visitors to join them. Eldon told them, however, they could not stay. He dare not tell them he was from another time and space so far distant. The Franoi authorities allowed Eldon and party to go to Dragoon, but only under their restrictions. They could not use their shuttle, and they had to wear radio locator tags concealed on their bodies. They landed in a secluded place near a village, so that they would not have to walk too far to make contact. The Franoi officers that brought them there did not stay on the surface, but took a synchro-stationary orbit to maintain surveillance of the visitors. Dragoon was only a 3 on the tech scale, so there were no electrified or motorized machines. Conveyance was mainly self-ambulatory moving, walking, or a cart pulled by a work animal. Any notion of space travel from other worlds was not even imagined by the populace in general. Despite the haze that hung in the mid-atmosphere all the time, this was a very agreeable planet for any IB. It reminded Eldon of Earth in its ancient past. The Franoi input the Dragoon language into Eldon's translator. They used tiny earpieces to hear it, so that no device would be visible. For the locals to hear them in their language, they would put their hand over their mouth because their gloves were actually translators. Then the visitors would say that that was their custom when speaking. At first communication was awkward, but the visitors adapted. "There's a village up ahead. We will tell them we are travelers and want to know about them and their customs," Eldon reminded Kenyasis. She said to him, "I am still a little some worried about my appearance since they do not like me. They look more like you." "Do not worry, Yass," as Eldon now called her. "Remember that Franoi told us that your appearance would not be a problem. They have not misled us, so I trust them." When they entered the village, something immediately struck them as peculiar. Even though they were strangers, no one seemed to take notice of them. Everyone just went about their business with blank expressions and a slowness or tiredness. There was no emotion or vitality in their movements. One thing that was perhaps promising in Eldon's view was the number of temples or places of worship. There seemed to be one for every imaginable god or deity. If the visitors understood correctly, there was one for trees, several for animals, some had symbols representing numbers or counting, and of course one for their sun or star. Eldon and Yass observed the villagers going in and out of their hovels, but especially those that came out of the worship houses. Most kept to their species or tribes, but Eldon noticed some that were different from each other coming out of the hall of Armin, the one for their sun. The visitors approached the IBs exiting and zeroed in on one of them. He seemed to be a little more lively, maybe even exhibiting some kind of emotion. "What is this place?" said Eldon, gesturing to the structure they came out of. "And what do you do here?" The IB he spoke to and one other just looked at Eldon and Yass as if taken by surprise. Then Eldon added, "We are travelers and would like to know about this place." The more lively IB now said, "We worship Armin here, our highest god." He pointed to the sun in the sky. Traveler who covers mouth, what god do you worship? The source of all life, Eldon said, making a sweeping gesture. Yaibi now responded confidently. Armin is the source of our life. You have come to the proper place to worship the source. Eldon was impressed with this Dragoon Ibi spirit. My name is Eldon. This is... Kenyasis spoke up quickly. I am Kenyasis of Kimatis. No reaction was given to her outworlder appearance. I am Jabal. Will you come with me to my home so we may talk more? They gladly went with him. His home was a small dwelling made from plant materials and dried mud. There were plant boxes on the sides with a covered area for the camule, the animal used for work and transport. Jabal opened his door for the visitors and they entered. He motioned for them to sit on the stools there. Then he called his family to come meet them. The wife and daughter were in a room making clothes. One son was tending their work animal, and the other was in the back drawing up water from the well. This simple type of life did appear quaint, as in ancient Earth, at least on the surface. The family gathered around a table with full attention toward the visitors. Jabal spoke first. These are travelers. Their names are... Eldon gave the names. At the hall of Armin we met. It was my midday praise time. He said he worships the source of life as we do. Tell us more. Eldon silently asked for the right words and said, We believe the source is much more than Armin. For the first time, Jabal or anyone there showed real inquisitiveness and asked, What do you mean? Armin is the highest. Yes, the highest we can see, but the real source we cannot see. The source made Armin and all that we see. I cannot understand that, was Jabal's puzzled reply. Yas now offered her attempt at explaining it. This house and every house was built by someone, correct? Yes, my friends helped me build this one. And every house has a lamp or light so you can see when it gets dark. Yes, I believe so, he agreed. Now think of this world Dragoon as a huge house, and Armin is the light for this house. These were made by the source, the creator. It was as if a light came on in Jabal's head. It lit a space he had not seen before. I see, but the source is a creator. You mean like we make a house or a table, the creator makes a world or a sun? Exactly, you got the idea, Jabal, Eldon said with some excitement. Jabal's eyes had a light uncommon to his world when he asked, Then did this creator also make Armin's children? That is, the lights we see at night sometimes? The stars. Indeed, the creator did make them. Each one is a sun like Armin, but they are very far away, Eldon explained. The new concepts Jabal was apparently ready for because he accepted them. However, his family lost interest because it was too much for them to comprehend. At Jabal's insistence, they stayed to have a meal with him and his family. There was conversation about their three worlds, and more about the Creator, of course. Eldon used small items and fruits to show, in a general way, solar systems and the relation between stars and planets. Afterward, Yas mentioned to Eldon privately that there was something wrong with the food. Although it was tasteful, it was lacking nutrients. Yas' body could detect such things almost immediately. Without implying there was a problem, she asked about the origin of the food. Jabal's wife told her some was from a market, but most was grown in their pots. In their accommodation that night, Eldon and Yas began to put together a picture of Dragoon. They wondered why the ivies there were listless and lacking interest in just about everything. What was the haze that hung in the sky? What caused them to have so many different worship places? Not only in that village, but Jabal said they were covering the world. And why did the normal-looking and tasting food not have all the basic nutrients that it should? Eldon added one other thing to the puzzle. Before they arrived, he overheard two Franoi officers referring to the ivies there as Gregoonies. Eldon had seen more powerful and advanced civilizations manipulating and controlling lower, weaker, less advantaged peoples and groups before. It had been done on planetary scales, even for generations. Eldon suspected that was what was happening here. The Franoi were behind the scenes, keeping the Gragoons in a stagnant, dumbed-down, divided condition, for purposes of their own gain, no doubt. As he sat near his window in Source-speak, soothing tones flowed in from the night. It was a night-singer bird in the distance. This let him know that the Creator's works endure and keep their beauty even under the most oppressive and downgrading conditions. There was so much wonderful potential here being held down, it could not get free. He wanted to do more to help the downtrodden ivies here. Eldon was intrigued that this was much like another Earth that he had read about. Finally, they retired for the night, more tired than normal for some reason. Yas sat in her meditative position, which was her normal resting position. Eldon went to his room and fell asleep as soon as he hit the bed. The next day they bid farewell to Jabal and his family. The visitors made an impression which would not be forgotten. At least one person or family on Gregoon had their mind expanded to consider more accurately the source, the Creator. Eldon explained that their mission was not over and that they had to leave. So Jabal gave Eldon a gift. It was a set of twin Horus gods obtained from one of the temples that had been presented to Jabal long ago. A Horus was a reptilian creature that could stand upright on its hind legs. They represented comfort and pain. Jabal's wife gave Yas a multicolored towel she had made. They gratefully put the small items in their pouches and started walking up the trail they had come in on. The village was almost out of sight when they reached the spot where the Franoi had said they would pick them up. They waited almost 1 hour. "Where are they? This does not feel right," Yas said with some impatience. "This is the time and place, and they know where we are because we have the tracking tags," Eldon said. "Maybe we are not far enough from the village," Yas speculated. "I don't think that is it, Yas. A skycraft would not likely be seen here, but we can walk a little farther out." They walked some distance farther. After 2 hours, with no craft appearing, they decided to return to the village. "The Franoi have abandoned us here," was Eldon's conclusion. While yet about 4 kilometers from the village, they saw a cloud of dust outside of the village. It got larger, and they realized it was a group of rioters on camules. They were coming out toward them, and at a gallop. Eldon and Yas did not know what this meant, and just stood looking. Soon they could see banners with symbols. The symbols they had seen on one of those temples there. Then they saw that they were holding out spears or swords. The rioters were ready for battle, ready to kill. The 2 visitors on foot turned and ran the other direction. They were the only ones out there. The rioters must be coming for them. Fleeing for their lives now, the hoofbeats got louder, and the cries of the riders could be heard. Eldon held Yas' hand tightly and said, "Source, speak now! O Creator, see us! We need your help!" Then they both fell to the ground and covered their heads. The riders' screams now were not as before. They were screaming out of fear. They rode on past the 2 on the ground, even dropping some of their weapons. Eldon looked up and saw that at least 2 of the riders had spikes on their head. Why did they pass? What were they afraid of? Eldon thought. Then there was a humming sound from the sky. He and Yas looked up. It was their shuttle. It landed right in front of them. The door opened. They cautiously approached it and found no one inside. "Oh, thank you, great creator," Yas excitedly cried. "He has saved us. This is extraordinary," agreed Eldon. They left Dragoon with no further incident. Armin was fading from sight, and they were on their way. Eldon wondered about the shuttle. There was an automatic system that causes the shuttle to return to the pilot after being separated for a time, but Eldon did not think that it was put into his shuttle. Also, it was locked inside a building on Frenoy, yet it came to them. The Creator had definitely helped them. All systems were working. They were preparing for hypersleep when they were alerted to the web tunnel entrance. It was there now, close to Armin. The 7th and final star system was the Zaxby star cluster. Of the 114 stars in the cluster, only one, Sanjax, had planetoids with intelligent beings. Sanjax was about halfway between the edge and the center. The planetoids were Dax, Trax, and Quax. Dax was originally a research outpost for the Denovans and later the Hearthites. A small number elected to stay there indefinitely. A few seekers were known to be there. The approach to Dax had to be very precise, on a path that avoided gravity fields of the other stars. Once there, they landed on a pad inside a large crater. Then the pad lowered inside the surface and the cover closed. Leaving the shuttle in the pad bay, they found themselves in a maze of corridors. They did not see anyone around. Everything was automated. The two now entered an elevator. It took them deep into the planetoid. Inside, they found a small colony of albino ibis that were doing well with their hydroponic gardens, solve generators, and even a small lake. They were hospitable to Eldon and Yas. Since they rarely if ever had visitors, the conversation and exchange of information was greatly appreciated. But as for there being genuine seekers there, none were found. The Daxinos did not have much to say when asked about the other 2 planetoids. No communication had been made with the others for a long time. None of them seemed to care. Eldon and Yas did not waste any more time there. They made their way to Quax. The 2 landing pads there were destroyed. It was hard to say if it was due to a meteor shower, the solar wind, which was unpredictable, or done purposely. Scans showed no life. Quax had been abandoned. The final possibility, Trax, was going to be more difficult. It was a wandering planetoid. It was not held by just one star in the cluster. It wandered between at least 2, if not more, stars. This meant that its mass was less than the others, and that it endured extremes in temperatures at the least. It would be a so-called long shot to find life there at all. And how would they locate a piece of rock in the maze, as it were, floating aimlessly among the sapphire stars of Zaxby? Eldon decided to plot a spiral course out from Sanjax using the sensors he had on the shuttle. They could scan out a few light years. If they did not find it in a solar day, they would leave. Several hours into their search, they found an object large enough to be Trax. It was on its way to being 2 stars away from Sanjax. They reached it as fast as they could. Yas kept urging Eldon to get inside it because of a sense that someone was there needing help. It looked like a giant frozen rock. How could anything be alive in it? When they landed and were lowered down, the cover was jammed. The landing bay could not be pressurized. They had to wear their EVA suits. They then found the elevator had no power. They had to walk down many flights of stairs, some in darkness, until they reached the core. The inside was mostly dark, looking lifeless. Yet Yas kept urging Eldon to go on. Finally, they found a room with a working panel by the door. It indicated the room had IB life-sustaining conditions inside. They were able to open the outside door, enter the airlock that still worked, and enter the room. It was dark inside. Eldon found the light button and gave it one solid push. A buzzing was heard, then a pop. The light flickered and then illuminated the room. To their amazement, an IB was laying on the divan. They removed their helmets and came closer. He was frail and appeared to be Anduvian. His skin was a dark purple color, wearing a wrap that they customarily do, and in a fetal position. Immediately, Yas bent down and touched him. "There is still life in him," she said, then looked at Eldon. "Can you help him, Yas?" "I will try." She unzipped her suit. A feeler organ extended from her to him. After a second, it recoiled back. She was a little frightened because he was near death. Her feeler touched his chest, and she began breathing hard. She was feeling a great drain on her energy. Yas moaned and leaned over the Anduvian. "Yas, are you all right?" Eldon anxiously asked. Yas just nodded her head. After a few seconds, the Anduvian moved his arms. Then he awoke. At that moment, Yas broke off contact. She fell to the floor, exhausted but alive. Eldon reacted and helped her into a chair near the divan. He gave her some liquid nutrient from her suit bag. Then he gave some to the Anduvian. "I am Mandok of Andukonga. I thank Yovu, my creator, for you. You have rescued me." At that moment, Eldon thanked the creator too for finding this IB. "What happened to you, Mandok?" "Radio did. They never came back," he barely managed to say, but he was growing weaker. In a few minutes, Yas felt strong enough to stand. They found a suit for Mandok, but it was defective. It could not be patched with what was in the room, which was not much. So Eldon promised to return and took Yas to the shuttle. It was slow going as he helped her up all those stairs. Then, after she was in the shuttle, he returned with her EVA suit for Mandok. Eldon had to help him up the stairs too. At one point, he was afraid that Mandok would not make it. He may have to carry him. Could he do it? Mandok did make it up to the shuttle. Eldon put him in the only available space, which was a hypersleep unit. They were all very glad that they searched for that final rock tracks. It was a triumphant completion of this Sea-Circ mission. Chapter 13. Enemy Inside. GTA 106, star 10, star 9477, star 0.6. Earth was a welcome sight again after the Seeker Circuit mission. Eldon had taken the web tunnel straight to Earth after leaving Kenyasis and Mandok on Cumatis. It was a rare opportunity. He would not be eligible for it again for at least 15 years. Although Eldon enjoyed the Sing Sword missions across the galaxy and beyond, he was now looking forward to being at rest on his home planet. It was now GTA 106 9477 in the shortened version, and Eldon was somewhat anxious about seeing Selena again, since about 10 solar years had passed on Earth since he had left. Selena's home was located in the eastern Wichitation Range Mountains, about 10 minutes from the Atlantic coast by turbo tunnel train. The road leading to her house was lined by birdhouses on both sides. The tweeting and chattering was intense as they watched Eldon walking at a good pace, walking to get past the birds. As he got nearer, the house could be seen between the spruce and pines. A rustic and sturdy hideaway nestled in this picturesque setting. Suddenly and quite strangely, the birds stopped chirping. It was almost silent now. Eldon looked back and then continued walking. His own footsteps was all he could hear. He sensed strongly that he was being watched by someone other than the birds. A shaking of tree limbs preceded a large brown mass dropping down from above to land right in front of Eldon. It was a mountain chimp taking a threatening stance facing him. It let out a shriek, and Eldon jumped back a few steps. The ape was half Eldon's height, but had huge, powerful arms and a big square head. It looked into Eldon's face, then it shrieked again. The big chimp pointed at Eldon, then clapped his ape hands and made a gesture for Eldon to follow him. He seemed to be saying, "We have been waiting for you. Come on in." Then the chimp excitedly ran on ahead, making squawking sounds. Now standing in front of the house, Eldon could see it was surrounded with life. All kinds of small animals were positioning themselves to view the new visitor. Among the animals were small bears, mountain cats, and deer. The front door swung open, and the big chimp jumped out and motioned for Eldon to come inside. The inside was colorful yet simple, with clean, smooth surfaces. The chimp led Eldon through to the back door and out onto a patio. He moved a chair, and so Eldon sat in it. 5 minutes went by, but where was Selina? Eldon pondered this place. It was a dream come true for Selina, everything she loved, a perfect home for her. The chimp now returned, holding a tray with 2 cups on it. He carefully set it on a table, then served 1 cup to Eldon and held one for himself. Then the ape sat in a chair opposite to his guest. The guest took a sip of it was citral limeade, one of his favorites. He chuckled at the crazy thought he just had. "Welcome back, Eldon." Wait, was that Selina's voice? Where did it come from? "How do you like my new look?" The voice seemed to be coming from the chimp. Its mouth had just moved, and it was Selina's voice again. Eldon just stared at the chimp as it drank from its cup. Then laughter came from behind the bushes as 3 children and Selina stepped out from behind them. Eldon had been fooled by one of Selina's tricks once again. She came over and hugged the chimp, saying, "Thank you, Calvin. You did very well." Then she hugged and kissed Eldon on the cheek. Eldon embraced her back, glad for the warm welcome. "The same, Selina. I should have known there would be a psych mine, a frescazi in my language. Remember, that is what we used to call them." "Yes, Selina, of course. I should have remembered that," Eldon said with a little embarrassment. Selina nodded and turned to her students present. "Kelly, Dondi, and Jody, this is an old friend. His name is Eldon." 3 happy-faced youths, maybe 11 years old, waved and said hi. Eldon returned their greeting. "Now go with Calvin. Come back in 2 days for more training with the goats." "Are they going home?" Eldon asked. "Yes, Calvin will transport them to the turbo station. I teach them on certain days here." Eldon's eyes widened, and he displayed an incredulous smile. "You mean you allow a mountain chimp to operate a transport with children? You're serious?" "Oh yes. Calvin is highly intelligent and very reliable. I would trust him with my life. I am serious." Eldon shook his head in amazement. "I think it is wonderful what you are doing here with the animals and the children. You have a beautiful place." "Thank you so much. Everything seemed to come together for me to get this place about 5 years ago. Now I can combine my 2 favorite things, animals and children, in my animal care courses. My students love it. I am very happy for you, Selina. You have done much good in the 10 years that I have been gone." "Thank you, but it's 12 years. "What, 12? "Yes, you left on your mission almost 12 years ago," she said, smiling. With a surprised look, Eldon responded, "I must have miscalculated." He looked up, sighed, and said, "I am really sorry for the long time away." "If your Herthite expression means you are asking pardon, I give it. I know that space missions can take much longer than expected. I am just glad you are back safe." She reached over and held his hand. Eldon was grateful for the touch and the understanding. "How long was it for you out there?" she asked. "Longer than I wanted it to be. Unfortunately, I had to use hyperspeed on some of it. So if I include that time, it was about 17 quadums, 280 days, or 75% of a solar year." "I would like to hear all about it. Tell me, Eldon." You are the one I have waited to see and tell it. You know that I went to 7 star systems." She nodded in rapt attention. "So right from the start there was a warning about an enemy on the first planet, Dinoa of Proxima. Then later on that planet an attempt was made on my life. The enemy tried to shoot me with a projectile, but my assistant Lynn saved my life." Eldon went on to give a detailed account of his mission into the night as they ate nuts and fruit on Selena's patio. Finally, Eldon went to his home. The happy reunion was the first step toward reviving their partnership after the long separation. Eldon detected in her formalness and controlled spirit that she was not ready for a close relationship yet. She did not show any negative response to the long absence, so maybe there really was not any hard feelings. Eldon wondered if that was good or bad. Her life was different. She had many new friends, but not a partner like Eldon. So he now had to find the best way to re-enter Selena's life, and in time he hoped that their relationship would be close again. Back at Eldon's small home near the coast, things were not quite the same. The auto home cleaner had malfunctioned, and several years of dust and cobwebs had accumulated during his absence. He had been at his place some days before visiting Selena, but had not bothered to thoroughly clean it of dust and insects. At least his plants were still growing because the auto plant system was still working. The small sunroom was darkened with so many leaves and branches of his once small plants covering the translucent panes, filling the limit of the room. As he was spraying them by hand, Eldon made a shocking discovery. A plant was dead. It was a century miniature cypress, one of his favorites. It was a gift from Selena and originated from her home planet Valagnes. It had seemed just fine the day before. What could have caused it to die so suddenly? Eldon was puzzled and quite disturbed. Later, while his older robot cleaning bugs were scouring every cubic centimeter of his house by lasers, Eldon sat out on the nearby beach. He thought of the times that he had had with Selena on the beach before his sea circ. His mind gravitated to the negative as he saw the dead tree again. Did this represent the current state of their partnership? Apparently so. He tried to force his mind to think positive thoughts. He was alive. He was home. He had many experiences to record and help other seekers of the source. He knew of many on Earth. This would be best for him to spend his time on those pursuits. As for Selena, she would be there later in his life, so he thought. The next several days were less than restful, more like restless. Eldon found it hard to feel at home. He felt more like he was at a rest stop before another mission. Instead of preparing for the Seeker conference that was due, he found himself daydreaming on the beach, reminiscing happier days. He wrote Selena's name in the sand, and then imagined it was a new word for pain. In the corners of his eyes he saw ibis on the beach looking at him. This made him feel strangely unwelcome. It was as if he did not belong there. Eldon avoided the beach after that day. The next day, Eldon began his written account of the sea circ. The study room window viewed a small garden with a few palm trees in the distance. He put on recorded music of Vivaldi. Then he sat at the desk and looked out the window. This was a little peace and solace that he needed. He had visited many beautiful places, but a garden view on Earth appealed to him most. He preferred the old method of writing with a prime stylus on a prime pad, which could store about 5,000 pages of text. He had everything he needed, but he found it hard to concentrate. After 20 minutes, he had only written 2 sentences. Of course, the actions and results of the entire trip were recorded by the android Lynn until it was lost, and entered into the log of the craft they used. But Eldon always liked to write his own accounts of his travels, which included more than dry facts. He was imagining the orange and purple swirling clouds of Dinoa, the first planet, when he closed his eyes. The telecom alert beep sounded, then a voice. "Eldon? Eldon, are you there?" It was Selena calling. Awake now, he reached to answer, then felt a momentary apprehension, but ignored it. "Good day to you, Selina. You caught me daydreaming." "I didn't mean to wake you." "No problem. You called at the right time. What is happening with you?" "I want to let you know about a concert at the Will Forest Amphitheater in a few days. I am going to it with some friends. You are invited to come." Silence. "Would you like to come?" "It is a mountain music group. I don't remember the name." "Yes, I surely would. Thank you for asking me. I need something like that." The concert/social event went well. However, Eldon could not shake the feeling that he was an outsider. Selina's mountain life friends were a little too friendly in Eldon's opinion. They asked an inordinate number of questions about Eldon and his life. They seemed really happy that the long-lost partner for Selina had returned. At first Eldon was somewhat annoyed, but then he thought, "She cared enough about me to tell her friends. I should be glad." Before the evening was over, Eldon mustered up the courage to invite Selina to his place. She gladly accepted. The day had been a success. The morning of the next day was the best yet since Eldon had returned. He sensed harmony in his morning source-speak. He was able to collect his thoughts and get some writing done. Best of all, it seemed that things may work out well with Selina after all. This was what he hoped, which kept the negative thoughts at bay. That night Eldon was in bed and just entering a doorway from his bedroom to a tropical paradise where Selina was sitting waiting for him. When he walked across the sand, he heard footsteps. Then, when he reached Selina, before she could turn around, he heard breathing as if it was right near his ear. He immediately opened his eyes, darkening the sky on his beach. He turned on the lamp behind him. There was no one in the room but him. No sound now except his own more labored than normal breathing. He found this more frightening than the encounter with the creature at Bayor Towers. He left the lamp on and tried to sleep. In the light of the morning, Eldon found evidence of what he imagined was an intruder during the night. His prime pad was on the floor in his study room. He was sure he left it on the desk. He had never left it on the floor. What else may have been moved, he thought. On a table was an open book. It was one of those rare ancient codex books from his collection. He looked at the cover. It was blank. He turned to the title page. It read, "Midnight Madness." Where did this come from? He did not remember having such a book in his house. As Eldon's head began to spin, whoa, he backed off from the cliff by his rational thinking approach to problems, which had always worked for him. It was either an intruder or he did it himself and did not remember. Both possibilities he did not like to consider. He inspected the house for any more abnormalities. None were found, except one thing he was not sure about. The twin Horus gods given to him by Jabal of the planet Dragoon were separated. Eldon thought they had been closer together on a shelf, but he just was not sure. He could not trouble his mind with it any longer because he was preparing for Selina's arrival later that day. She came on time, wearing an outfit that was colorful and pretty. It reminded Eldon of the way she used to dress on Valagnes. They enjoyed the meal of chalazingas with plantanas that he spiced especially for her. Afterward they played Galaxy Wheel, which helped to melt the frost, so to speak. Then it was time to sit by the fire and talk. "I've done more writing lately. There is no way to accurately describe everything so that most Ivies can understand. You really had to be there to experience it for yourself." "What I have read so far is wonderful, Eldon. I have to try, and thank you for being here and paying attention to my words and stories, my dreams." "I will always be happy to listen and read your stories," Selina said with genuine affection. Looking eye to eye, Eldon said, "You are a big part of them." Selina laughed softly and said, "You must come see my students play ball with the chimps. It is really funny." She looked at the floor smiling. Still looking into her face, Eldon asked seriously, "Did you ever consider another partner?" Selina let out a sigh and then sat on the floor. She motioned for Eldon to sit down with her. They now sat cross-legged in front of each other. Selina held up her palms. Eldon touched his palms to hers. This was a communicative posture for partners, and it felt warm and secure to both of them. "You were always the one partner for me," Selina assured, then asked, "Was there another for you?" "I made some friends, but no other life partner. You are the only one." This was the first real communication on a deeper level since they were reunited. As it continued that evening, they delved into the more meaningful, substantive topics. "There must be a reason the Creator made us this way," Eldon stated. Selina responded, "He made us to live on a Terran world and to enjoy the things he has provided." Eldon was not satisfied with what he viewed as a complacent attitude on her part. "Yes, but what we have learned about the Source, being a benevolent Creator, is unique and adds purpose of the highest sort to our lives. It compels us to bring this knowledge to other IB life forms." Selina looked away and said, "That is very noble of you. At the same time, though, there is nothing wrong in choosing to live out your life on a planet and seeking him there. In fact, I try to instill a desire in my students to see the Creator and his goodness in all life." "That is fine, but can you realize how the Creator could use us to be points of light in the galaxy?" "We are still in the galaxy here." "It may be, Eldon, that instead of going to endless stars to bring light about the Creator, we can focus it in one place on certain people and do more good." "I have thought about that. It does sound practical." He pondered a moment. "We have seen, though, that the Creator is gradually revealing himself. This is primarily being done through the Sing Sword movement. The evidence of this must be brought to the farthest star to add to IB's ideas of a source." Selina looked into Eldon's face and replied supportively, "True, and intrepid ones like you will lead the way and send the light out there. But for me," Eldon broke in, "you could accompany me again." "I will, on a one-time trip, but not as a career. My place and my roots are here now," she stated definitely. Later in the evening, their communication grew to a more subtle, nonverbal level as they remained in the posture with palms and tops of their heads touching. The feeling was a familiar one from the past, yet with a new dimension. Eldon conveyed a feeling of wanting intimacy in a more Hearthite way. Selina got the message and responded immediately by throwing her arms around Eldon in an awkward embrace. She did not know how to control her emotions when aroused. It took Eldon a little by surprise. He was glad for her willingness, though, and embraced her back, somewhat calming her down. This close physical contact was new, especially for Selina. The act of mating in most IB cultures was a function or duty not particularly pleasurable. However, they now found this to be much more than a bodily function like eating or sleeping. It was warm, it was right, like it was meant to be. Their two hearts beating so close, feeling the pulse of life between them, was really beyond words. The desire began to rise in both of them for intercourse, the sexual Hearthite way. This was quite possible, although rare, between two similar IB life forms as Eldon and Selina. The added element of risk in their case was removed by procreative precautions. Now, with the physical stimulation growing more intense by the second, they lay on the floor. This was progressing faster than Eldon wanted. He tried to slow it down and gain more control, but it was like trying to wrestle a wild animal. She dug the nails of her fingers into Eldon's side, and he screamed, "Selina, please!" She stopped, releasing her grip, and just held him tightly. It now seemed that she was afraid as she said, "It's not right. Something is not right here. Did I hurt you?" "I don't think so. Are you better now?" "No, Eldon." She let go of him and sat up, brushing her hair out of her face. "Something happened to me." Eldon put his hand on her arm and said, "Well, it has been so long for you since—" "No, it has been a long time, but that is not it. Something is not right here. Something is wrong in this house." "Was it me, Selina?" "No, Eldon, not you. Please pardon me, but I have to leave now." Discouraged over this latest impasse in the relationship, Eldon just sat in front of the virtual fireplace and drank his wine late into the night. He told himself that it was too early for him and Selina to get intimate, but he could not get out of his mind her words about something being wrong in the house. When Eldon retired to his bath and bed area, he looked in his mirror. He was a sad sight. Then he noticed stains or a blotch on the mirror that he did not do himself. He thought it was strange, but was too tired to give it any more thought. When he approached his bed, why, it had a slight depression with wrinkles around it, a telltale sign that someone had been lying there. He looked around and saw that his media light was on. Had he been in there earlier listening to music or something? He could not remember and was too tired to try. He awoke in a cold sweat. What time was it? He knew only that it was dark. He did not remember getting into bed or going to sleep. What would it have been like if Selina had agreed to stay the night? Maybe that would be good to dream about. In this half-dreaming state is when he felt a presence in his bed. It started with the sound of breathing, then a hand caressing his chest. A leg rubbed his leg, then a body laid on top of him as he lay on his back. He tried to reach for the lamp but could not. Something prevented him from bringing in light and awareness. This female's body erotic motion caused Eldon to become very excited. This was far more sexual pressure than he had ever felt in his life. The body, person, or thing on him was totally dominating his body and mind, seemingly sucking the life from him. This was beyond any Hearthite sexual encounter. It was no longer a fantasy dream, but a terrifying experience. Eldon was afraid, too, by the fact that he did not try to fight it. It was all captivating and controlling of his senses. When he awoke, light from the window revealed the damage done during the night. The room was in a wreck. What happened? Then he remembered the sexual terror. His head ached. His body ached. Clothes, books, and various items were scattered all about the room. Did Selina come back last night? No, not even psych-mind Selina would do something like that. The next few days were like a nightmare that Eldon could not wake up from. He had similar visits at night from the mystery sexual predator. He became withdrawn, turning down invitations and not returning calls. He did not bother to clean himself or his house. When a nice flower and good fruit fell on his counter, he did not pick them up, but just brushed them into the disposer. He heard them mocking him, saying, "We are insignificant and yet better than you will ever be." His appreciation for beauty was breaking down each day. Unable to reach Eldon by calm, Selina was beginning to worry about him. She came to his door. When he came to the door, he did not open, but talked through the doorcom. "Selina, please go." "Eldon, are you all right? What is wrong?" "I've been ill. I need time." "Is there anything I can do?" There was no answer. Eldon had walked away into the dark confines of his prison. The next day, Eldon woke up to a loud clamor in front of his house. He opened his front door to find two large apes, chimps apparently, fighting over a wheel. Where did it come from? He looked over at his transport vehicle. A wheel was missing from it. He took a few steps toward the chimps, yelled at them, but was not heard over their shrieking. He turned back to see a brown bear in front of his door. It stood on its hind legs and towered over him. Eldon backed away. The chimps now rolled the wheel down the path leading to the beach. Eldon started after them, very suspicious of this whole incident. Halfway to the beach, the chimps were not fighting but playing, and the bear was not far behind on the path. When he reached the beach, There was Selina, surrounded by a group of her students. Eldon just stood there, feeling foolish. "Eldon, it's good to see you out here," Selina called to him. "The psych mine girl, I should have known," he said, throwing up his hands. Selina came closer. "Mind the animals, please, children." She came to Eldon, and the others kept their distance. "I had to find a way to get you out of that house." She reached for his hand. Eldon refused her touch. "I told you I was ill." "What is it, Eldon? I think that is an excuse. Please talk to me." The sea, air, children, and animals playing, and especially Selina's reaching out to him, made a strong impression. He felt more relaxed and was able to think now. "I know I should have come out before now. I ask your pardon, but I have been feeling strangely. Maybe I am ill. I don't know." She reached out her hand to him. He took it, and they walked toward the surf. "If I am ill, it could be moldy mad. Have you heard of it?" "Was that something you could catch in space?" "In an oversimplified way, yes. It is not well known because it is so rare. It is believed by a few researchers that frequent space travel, especially crossing into multi-dimensions, can cause a small minority to go mad. So the name moldy mad. I read that a theory says a so-called extra-dimensional shadow person can inhabit the traveler's mind and later manifest itself, perhaps during sleep." "Oh, you cannot have that, Eldon." "I have never had these symptoms before, but why do you seem so sure?" he said, peering into her eyes now. "Do not forget our connection through Kishina. It would not have worked if you were divided like that." "That is true, Selina. That connection was so clear and perfect, the closest thing to eternity that we have ever experienced." She put her arm around him and, looking out over the waves, said, "It means we have an eternal connection, Eldon." This meeting on the beach proved to be the cure for Eldon. Their relationship was healing, and they were both feeling stronger now. They discussed what to do now. If the problem was not with Eldon himself, then it was probably in his house. Selina agreed to use her extra sensibility to find what was wrong in Eldon's house. They waited until the evening, then entered through the front door. Earlier, Selina had suggested that they not mention anything about looking for an intruder, as if someone would be listening to them. So they remained quiet as Selina sat and concentrated. After only a couple of minutes, Eldon said, "Maybe this is not a good idea. It probably won't work." "You see, we have just been in here less than 5 minutes, and you have already begun to think negatively," Selina calmly said, with her eyes closed. She slowly rose and began to walk toward Eldon's bedroom. As they both approached the door to the bedroom, a noise could be heard like a wind. A light was coming from the darkened room. Then the door slammed in their faces. "The intruder is in that room. Very powerful," she stated, then backed away. Eldon tried to open the door, but could not move it. She said, "Please, let us go outside." They now went outside and discussed what to do about it. Selina said that the intruder may be able to sense their motives and even read their thoughts. Eldon admitted that his mind had not been his own lately. They agreed that it would be dangerous to return to the house. Then Eldon had an idea. He went to his friend Darwin, who helped him prepare a robot cleaning bug for surveillance. It could send signals that would show everything it scanned. They came back to Eldon's house and placed the bug inside. It was able to enter the bedroom with a special function of its lasers. When analyzing the three-dimensional image of the bedroom the bug sent, there was nothing unusual except one of the twin Horus gods Eldon had on a shelf was now on the floor. He wondered if one or both of those could be the problem. Selina said that would be a likely possibility. So now they needed a plan to get those two items out of Eldon's house. The robot bug was called to the front door along with Eldon's robot bug that was already in his house. They adjusted the lasers and suction on them to be 10 times more powerful than normal. They programmed them to find the Horus gods, capture them, and bring them out. As the bugs were scanning the bedroom, they each came upon a twin god at the same time. Then they fired their lasers at them, causing the entire surface of the twin gods to be sealed with intense A-wave energy. This strategy worked, taking the entity inside by surprise. Each twin god was then sucked inside the robot bug in an energy vacuum and promptly brought outside. Outside, Selena put her hands on each robot bug and quickly determined which one had the problematic intruder. That bug, containing the malicious entity, was put inside a contam capsule and shot into extragalactic space. The capsule, marked with warnings, will float between galaxies for millions of years. This was the way to dispose of highly dangerous and indestructible entities or substances. The other twin god was taken out of the bug because Selena got no bad impressions from it. It was the one that represented comfort. Selena and Eldon's relationship had been restored to a strong state. They became close again. As they sat in front of the fire, Eldon said, "Your deep extra sense has come through, and I will always trust it." "And you will be careful what you bring back from space, Eldon." Just then they heard an alert from the galactic beacon. "Okron star explosion. Take precautions immediately."